Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 132 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I cannot be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to talk about worrying about money and how worrying about money, just like worrying about just about anything in your life, is not a productive endeavor to partake in. We do not need to be worrying about our money. So I'm going to talk about some of the causes of our worries and how we can mitigate those particular worries that we do have, and then how we can go about living content, fulfilled financial lives as we move forward in our long-term financial journey. Before we get started though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, then just make sure to review the podcast there and subscribe. Do not forget to subscribe. And then follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out on these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you walk through a financial plan, create a financial plan that can work specifically for you and help you walk step by step down that plan and keep you accountable to it, I can help you do that. Just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you, and we can begin pushing towards our long-term financial goals together. Well, if the past year hasn't created enough worry for all of us, money has been one of those things that has been, quite a bit at the forefront of things that people have been worrying about in their lives, to go along with their health and their family's health, and how they're going to do things that they used to do. Life has changed quite a bit, but for a lot of people, their financial lives have changed quite a bit. And so I really want to address, this worrying about money and, how we can actually not have to worry about money in our long-term financial life if we put the correct, safeguards in place and we do things in a proper order and we have the right mindset about money as we move forward. And the reason that we don't want to be worrying about money is that that worry tends to trickle to other parts of our lives. It makes us anxious, it makes us frustrated, it makes us just have all different types of emotions that will trickle into other parts of our lives. Will trickle into our relationships with our spouses, with others around us. We will maybe build some jealousy or envy to those who don't have the financial issues that we have and don't have the financial worries that we have. And we want to be able to combat these things because we know that these are not healthy for our long-term financial success and financial freedom. And so we need to be able to believe that we can move forward. We need to be able to believe that we can do big things with money. We can do things that are going to get us to our place of long-term financial freedom. And so let's just start with, I'm going to talk about 6 ways that money affects our life. And so the first thing is we obsess over what ifs. And so one thing when you're worrying about anything, you think about all of the things that could go wrong. You think about, what if, my husband loses a job or my wife loses her job? What if, my kid, has to go to the hospital and there's a big hospital bill? What if, any number of things occurs and you have to deal with that financial burden that may be on you? And so when you're afraid of things that could occur, it kind of paralyzes you. It puts you in a place where you don't really want to act because you don't want any of those what ifs to occur. And that's just not what we should be doing. We should be continuing to move forward even if there are the likelihood of certain things occurring in our lives that could set us back. We don't need to be bogged down by those things. And the thing about falling into the what ifs and all of the possible things that could go wrong, especially with your money, is that things spiral in our minds extremely quickly. If you're thinking about the what ifs of, what could occur with your money or what could set you back financially, we tend to go down the rabbit hole to the very, very worst thing that could happen. And we don't think too logically sometimes about the actual probabilities of these things occurring. That's why during the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been a lot of people who are like, well, I'm not going to pay on debt because, I just want to put away a lot of money because I don't know if I'll lose my job or not, which seems like a reasonable assumption. It seems like a reasonable course of action to make. But if you work in an essential job, you work as a nurse or you work as a teacher, you do some job that is very needed and that you're not going to lose, then it can be a very irrational decision to be making. And so we have to not let the what ifs dominate our lives, because if we do, we end up making decisions that are not optimal for our financial lives. And then if we worry about money a lot, we'll end up fighting about money a lot. And this happens specifically with your spouse. You can end up fighting about different things surrounding your money because money is a stress point. It is extremely emotional and behavioral. And if you're constantly worrying about, are we going to have enough money? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we pay these bills? Can we still go on living life in the way that we have been living? Then if there's any type of stress around that, then it can trickle over again to our relationship, specifically with our spouses. And it's hard to be empathetic towards the other person when you're stuck in that place of worry, in that place of really struggling to have your own emotions in check about such a sensitive topic like money. And even further from leading to fights, worrying about money can also lead to what we call financial infidelity, which is just hiding your spending, hiding your financial habits from your spouse. Because if one individual is really worried about money and you really want to do certain things with your money and you just decide that you're going to go out and do them without checking with the other person, well, you might end up trying to hide that from your spouse, and that's extremely dangerous and can really lead into more fights and more long-term issues within your relationship. And so we try to sweep things under the rug. We try to spend and hide things and make things look all clean and perfect. And sometimes even when you're the one that's worried about money, you will hide things because you feel bad that you've gone out and done the things that you've done with your finances. And so again, we see how worrying about money can lead to these actions that may not be characteristic of actually who we are, but it is caused by this worry. It's caused by these emotions, by these behaviors that really come up when we are in a situation of high stress or high anxiety when it comes to our money. And then another way that worrying about money can affect our life is that we will waste valuable time. I alluded to it a moment ago, that we can end up being paralyzed by the weight of our worry. And that will cause us to waste a lot of time. If you're constantly worrying about things and trying to set up as many safeguards to make sure that bad things don't happen, and you're stuck in the what ifs, and you're thinking and stressing and you're anxious and all of these different types of things, then you'll end up wasting a whole lot of time. We cannot worry about things that we cannot control. And so when we are wasting this time, we could be doing things that are building up the relationships around us. We could be doing things to do better in our financial life, to make sure we're not in a position to have to worry as much as you may be currently. But instead, if you're spending all of your time just wallowing in those emotions, then nothing is getting better. Nothing is progressing. You are just digging yourself a deeper and deeper and deeper hole of worry, anxiety, and stress. And that can only lead to some of those bad behaviors that we've talked about, and some of the emotional stress outpouring in the way of fights and things of the like. And so we want to make sure that we're not worrying about money, because we will end up wasting time. We will end up not doing the things that we are supposed to do, because we are just weighed down by these particular emotions about our money. And then the last two things in the ways that worrying about money affects our life. Worrying affects both our physical and our mental health. Money stress is a factor in your physical health, whether or not you want to believe it. We see that money stress ends up leading to higher rates of diabetes, migraines, cardiovascular disease, sleeping problems, right? We can probably really sympathize with the last two, right? These cardiovascular diseases and sleeping problems, because it is something that it causes some tightness in your chest, right? Have you ever had a big financial decision or a big financial situation and it just makes your chest tight, right? I could see where that could cause some cardiovascular issues. And then obviously sleep problems, right? If you're constantly worrying, you're constantly staying up at night and thinking about all of the possible scenarios, and you're stressing and you're anxious about what may happen in the future, then obviously that can lead to less sleep, and then obviously that will lead to more health problems in your life, because sleep is so important. So it's a really vicious cycle with money stress, because it does lead to these other things physically that can continue to just break us down even further. And if you guys have dealt with any type of stress or anxiety before, you'll know that the physical impacts will just pull you down even more mentally. And so it will continue to drag you down and down. And that's why we have to break this cycle of worry. That's why we have to break this cycle of anxiety. And then pretty obviously, mental health is going to suffer. Anxiety and depression are absolutely on the rise in our country, and a lot of this is concentrated in younger people. And it's no surprise because younger people are being saddled with large amounts of debt that is creating a large amount of financial stress earlier and earlier in their lives. They have student loan payments that they maybe can make the minimum payment, but they've got a lot of student loan debt that's really saddled onto them, that's really weighing them down. They've got car payments. They've got all of these different types of things, these credit card debts. They've got a bunch of things on their plate that they're having to deal with and having to pay on, and it creates some money stress on top of the stresses of just being a young adult and trying to, find a good job and trying to establish yourself and your family, trying to, buy your first house, or trying to rent your first apartment, or trying to do whatever it may be to step out on your own for the first time. And that's why we see so many younger people living at home at, higher rates than we've ever seen before. And this is because these people are so saddled with debt and money stress that they're afraid to step out into the world. And that is a big issue. And so worrying about money can really be a drain on our mental health. And again, the mental health aspect is going to impact our behaviors. It's going to impact what we choose to do on the other side of that worry, of that anxiety, of that depression, of that stress, whatever it may be. Our actions are going to flow from those mental health issues. And so, again, this is another reason why worrying about money is so important. So then we come to, how do you stop worrying about your money? And you may say, I don't know if I can ever stop worrying about my money, because it is so integral to my life. It's so integral to everything that I do day by day. How could I stop worrying? Well, number one, we have to focus on facts. We have to focus on real things. We have to focus on things that have happened historically. We have to focus on what we know will happen in the future. We have to focus on the things with the highest probability of occurrence. We have to focus on what is real, because again, if we're constantly looking at what ifs and we're looking at worst case scenarios, that's not going to be good for us, right? If you're constantly looking at the worst case and you're being pessimistic about what could occur, then that's not going to be good for your mental health. That's not going to be good for the behaviors that you see flow from yourself surrounding your money as you move forward. One place where focusing on the facts is extremely important is investing. And a lot of people don't focus on the facts. They invest based on emotion. They invest based on how they feel about a stock, or how they feel about a certain investment. And the emotions that come with a hard market downturn are very hard to deal with. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, March of 2020, when the pandemic was beginning and the market fell over 30%, that is a hard thing to swallow day after day, seeing the market fall so hard and so fast. But you can't just sit around and worry about that. You have to focus on facts. And the facts surrounding that situation are long-term. The stock market has seen several different crashes. It's seen several different bear markets. We have always come out of them. There is absolutely no plausible way that the stock market as a whole could go to zero, because these are the largest companies in the world, the most profitable companies in the world, that things like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones is tracking. And so that is not realistic. The facts are is that it's not likely going away, and the facts are it's going to increase in value over time. We can expect an increase in value over time, and being able to expect that based on the historical data, based on the facts of what the stock market is and what you expect it to do, can inform your decisions. And it could have informed you, as I chose to do, to buy more at that time, to invest more at cheap prices. But a lot of people unfortunately sold at that time and took losses that were unnecessary to take because they did not focus on the facts. So in just about every part of your financial life, you need to focus on what's real. You need to focus on the numbers in front of you and how you can attack things realistically. Because again, if you're super pessimistic about what could occur, you could be telling yourself lies. You could be telling yourself things that are not extremely likely to occur. And so, you could be digging yourself into a bigger hole just by thinking that something could go as bad as you've made it out to be in your brain. So focus on the facts, focus on the real things, and that can alleviate our worry a bit. And then you have to have a plan, especially with your money month to month. We call that plan a budget. Having a budget, having a plan, knowing what you are going to do, knowing how you're going to allocate your money is so, so vital. Because if you have a plan, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of things. You just follow the plan, right? If there is no plan, and it's constantly leaving you with making hard decisions time and time and time again, and that can create a lot of stress in your household. It can create a lot of worry that maybe you didn't make the right decision this time. But if you have a good, well thought out plan, you have a plan for your spending, you have a plan for how you're going to invest, you have a plan if you or your spouse loses a job and you don't have income for a certain period of time. You have a plan for these things that could occur, but may not be extremely likely, but we want to be prepared for. We want to have our emergency fund in place. We want all these things to be planned out. And the thing that a plan will do is it will preset your decision making, which makes life a lot easier. And you don't have to worry about making decisions. You don't have to worry about whether you did something right or not. You just follow the plan. And especially if it is a good plan that has been shown to work over time, if it's a good plan that other people are working. And that's why I created the financial action plan. I created that so we can alleviate some of the stresses in our lives, so we can just look at this plan and go, okay, what do I do next? And just follow it right down the line. And then when you're doing that, there's not a lot of room for worry. It's just, okay, I see something, I'm going to submit to this, and action will flow from whatever the plan says. And so having a plan is an absolutely huge deal, and it will help you to make the most optimal decisions over time. And even if they're not optimal decisions, even if it's not the absolute best decision you could have made, at least you made a decision. You weren't paralyzed by your worry. You weren't paralyzed by the fact that you had all this stress and anxiety on you, and you actually are doing something. I mean, that's really half the battle. Half the battle in personal finances is getting up and doing something. It is getting up and actually investing for the first time. It is starting paying on a debt, whether or not it's the debt that I think you should be paying on or not. The fact that you are getting started is something. It is fantastic that you can actually begin starting to put money in an emergency fund, in savings. That is a huge deal. Starting to pay off your home, even if you're not doing it in a perfect way, and there really is no perfect way, but you want to do it in a way that is proven to put some safeguards in place for you over time that would be most optimal. But even if you're not doing it in an optimal manner, at least you are doing something. And having a plan to direct you into what to do next can take a lot of the worry, a lot of the stress off of your shoulders, and really make your financial life more enjoyable and more stress-free than you could have really ever imagined. And then another thing that we can do to alleviate our worries, another thing we can do to keep ourselves from worrying about money, we can be keenly aware of where we are weak. We can be keenly aware of where we are weakest in our financial life. And we can know the things that trigger us. We can know the things that trigger our stress, that trigger our anxiety. and we can put plans in place for that. And we can look at those things, honestly and say, I know that that is an issue I have. I know that is a place that I struggle with. And so when you meet whatever situation that may be, whatever step, whatever part of the plan that may be, at least you know that about yourself, and maybe you can attack that a little harder just to make sure that you don't fall back into old habits. Because, for instance, if you're somebody who has just made a pledge to say, hey, I'm not going to use consumer debt anymore. I'm not going to have car payments. I'm not going to have credit cards. I'm not going to deal with student loans. I'm not going to do any of these things. And let's say something occurs, right? Let's say, your transmission is to go out on your car. Well, if your transmission goes out, then obviously you have to pay for your transmission. Well, let's say you may be in a part of the financial action plan or whatever financial plan you are specifically working, that you don't have the cash to just pay for it up front all at once. And that can be a big issue. And if you had to put it on a credit card, and we've talked about these types of situations before, but let's say you had to put it on a credit card because you didn't have the cash on hand. You use all the cash you had and then you put the rest on a credit card. What that can do is that can spark behaviors within you that don't need to be sparked. If your weakness was going and sliding that plastic or inserting that chip into the machine and buying things with your credit card and doing it in a reckless manner, and then you are forced into doing that at one point in time, and then you go on a rampage because now it seems like it is normalized and you're falling back in to these old habits. So we can't allow ourselves to do that. We have to know that, hey, I am weak in that area. I am weak in having a credit card in my hand. I know that I'll run that balance up. I know that I'll accrue interest. I know all of these different things about yourself that will potentially pull you down really hard financially. And so we don't want to fall into those places. We want to be able to do things that are best in our financial life. And again, if we have to, let's say, use that credit card in that particular situation, that is okay. Obviously, I don't want you to have to fall into that place, but that's okay. And we get it paid off and everything's good. But we have to know that we are weak in that place, so that we, when we see that balance hit that credit card, that we're like, okay, I have to pay this off, and I have to pay this off immediately, or else I'm going to get comfortable with it. And people do this type of things with all different types of debt, and they do this type of thing with all different parts of their financial life. For instance, a lot of people, they will say, okay, I am not going to go back into student debt. I'm going to go back to school and I'm just going to pay for it. I'm just going to pay for it out of pocket. And that's what I'm going to do. And, nobody can stop me. And so they go and they're paying for it. And then some emergency occurs, right? And they have to allocate their money in a different way. And they can't pay for something directly out of pocket. Well, what's the easiest thing to run to? The easiest thing to run to would be a student loan. And so that is a weakness. That it is easy. It's something that you can always run to, but obviously it's not going to be beneficial for you. It's a poison on our society. Student loans are. And so we have to be aware that we will run back to these things. We have to be aware of our tendencies, of our just way of behaving. Because if you're somebody who is not really strong in your convictions, if you're not somebody who can really just go all in on something without falling back in to your old habits, then you need accountability. You need feedback about working your plan. You need a good plan that is going to go through every specific detail of what to do, because some people need that. Some people need something that is spelled out from A to Z, and some people don't. Some people can end up, filling in the blanks themselves and knowing which way they should go. But some people need it all the way spelled out, because if they are to, be given the chance to do something that is, not healthy for them financially, they could potentially fall into doing that thing again and falling into that weakness. And if they don't know their weaknesses, then they will fall into places where they can be extremely stressed and anxious and worried about money, and it's not a fun place to be. And now here towards the end, I want to clarify something. Worrying about money has nothing to do with how much money you have or how much money you make, right? Yes, having a lot of money, right, being wealthy can alleviate some of your stresses. It can alleviate some of your worries about money. But your income specifically does not alleviate those stresses. Now, why is that? Because most people, as they make more money, also increase their lifestyle. They also increase the amounts of debt that they hold. They increase the things that they purchase. They increase the car that they drive. They increase the vacations that they go on, the clothes that they wear. All of these different types of things. There is lifestyle drift. And so don't think that just because you make a certain amount of income that you worry about money more than somebody else. If you make $50,000 a year, I promise there's somebody making $150,000 a year that is just as stressed, if not more stressed than you are, because they have made financial decisions that are really unhealthy and far more dangerous to them than you have made for yourself. It's all about relative perspective. You have to look at yourself not just relative to other people, but see what they have done. For somebody making $50,000 a year, financing a $25,000 car is going to be a big deal, right? It's going to be a big part of their income. It's going to be a big piece of the debt that they have. But somebody making $150,000 a year, the equivalent may be financing a $70,000 Tahoe or $70,000 Yukon Denali or whatever that may look like. And so you have to look and you have to say, okay, just because somebody's making a certain amount of income doesn't mean that they are just going to naturally have more or less stress than the next person, or more or less worry about money than the next person. And a lot of our worry about money is not just coming from the amount of money that we have, because obviously we have this sense of security when it comes to money. We have this sense of, if I have some more, I'm not going to be quite as worried about it. But some people are just naturally stressed about money. Money is so entangled into their lives. It's so deeply rooted in their identity. It's deeply rooted in their ability to feel secure in their life. And I want to remind you that we cannot be worshiping money. Worshiping money, falling into that place, is one of the biggest ways that we can end up worrying about it. Because if we think that money is the end-all be-all, then it can be a place of consistent stress, consistent anxiety in our life. But if we look at money for what it actually is, it is a tool. It is a tool in order to build certain things in our lives. It is a necessity. It's something that we do need to have, but we don't need to worry about it so much that it becomes something that we idolize, something that we are going to chase at any cost. We're going to chase that financial security, or chase that amount of money in a bank account at all costs. That is only going to create more and more worry. Again, the amount of money that you have does not necessarily mean that you are going to be more or less stressed than the next person. Having more money may just make you more stressed, because now you have to figure out how to keep that money. You have to figure out how you are going to maintain what you have earned, what you have maybe grown over time. You have to learn how to maintain that, and that can be very stressful and be very worrisome as well. And so don't think that just because you're making $30,000-$40,000 a year that you have money worries that are way bigger than somebody else's. Your money worries just may look different. And so this applies to all of us, but it just may apply to all of us in very, very different ways. Live your life and work your financial plan where you are right now. And, depending on what your income is, that can look extremely different. And your ability to get out of debt or build an emergency fund or invest for the future may be hindered, or it may be advanced by the amount of income that you make. But you still have to be working towards the goal. You have to be working towards financial freedom. You have to be working towards not worrying about money. And so if we actually keep our eyes on what matters, right? If we know that we are not the owners of this money, this is God's money that we have been given to manage, then we won't worry as much at all. We will have a correct view of what money is, the tool that it is, and how we should be using it. And our stress and anxiety levels are likely to decrease a lot, and we're likely to make a lot better decisions about money if we are looking at God as being the provider of the money, and the money being His, and we are just managers. We'll likely make a lot better decisions, and we'll make them with a lot less stress and anxiety than we would have if money was the centerpiece of everything we were doing in our lives. So I hope specifically for you that you do not have big worries about money. If you do, then obviously go back, listen to this episode again, watch this episode again, and really get some of these key points and see how you can make changes in your life. If you need help dealing with your money situation, dealing with the worry that you have, I can definitely help you through financial coaching. You can just go to my website, www.mnowithdylan.com. Click on the Work with Dylan tab, and you can choose the financial coaching session type that would work best for you. And hopefully we can decrease your amount of financial stress, anxiety, and worry over time. So thanks for watching this video. If you could, go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below if you haven't done so already, and I'll be sure to get back to you there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, then be sure to subscribe and leave me a review. And follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's good supplementary materials to all the things that I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. Tune in tomorrow as I talk about being frugal versus being cheap and what that looks like in our financial life. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.